The Dice Tower, episode 600, The Quiet Achievement.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by Renegade Game Studios. Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, I'll share a bit about the Arizona Game Fair. Mandy and I will talk a couple of great import games, and we'll hear about your opinions on top 10 lists in victory points. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
Yay! 600! Woo!
I'm celebrating. My little doggies are here celebrating too. Hello.
I think that 600 episodes is amazing. Congrats to really everybody who's been involved in making the Dice Tower podcast a thing over the last many years. Not a lot of podcasts make it to 600 episodes. And while, Mandy, you and I haven't necessarily been part of all of those 600, I'm really happy and proud of the episodes we've been part of. And thank you to all of you listeners out there, because a lot of you have been on this journey through all 600. And that's pretty cool. So congrats to, I guess us all on 600.
It's so great. So great. I'm so happy to be a part of it.
And we had talked about having a thing. And I feel like Tom was kind of saying we don't have to make a big production out of every 00 episode. And I get where he's coming from there. So we're just going to cruise and do our thing. Let's roll into it, right?
Well, yeah, I feel like we should be like, on like those sets when you do the shows and they have like their 100th, 600th, 300th episode and everybody comes on with party hats and cake and have a little gathering. So we can kind of just do that amongst ourselves sometime, maybe?
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I want to mention, if my audio sounds a little different for some of this episode, I am recording from my hotel room in Arizona because I'm actually at the Arizona Game Fair as I record. And I've never been before. I was lucky enough to be invited by the convention organizer. And Mandy, I get to make you envious. Because guess what I got to do?
Oh boy, what is it?
I got to interview Vital Lacerda, who's here as a guest of honor.
Yes. Oh, I am so jealous. And for those who don't know, Vital Lacerda is one of my top favorite designers. Oh, very jealous.
Fabulously talented designer and such a charming person and very fun to talk to. We talked about his background as a marketer and the multiple roles he plays in his game design and development. And I really got to know a little bit more about him and just had a great time chatting with him. I'm going to check to see if that video, it was recorded. I'm going to see if that video is going to go up because I actually thought it was a wonderful discussion. And I think Vital is wonderful to listen to. He had some really great points about how he approaches things when he kind of gets stalled on the design process, which I think is really helpful for people to know that everybody has hard times when they do projects and things like that and work through them. So that was definitely an amazing highlight for me. And I also, Mandy, I don't know if you've done this, but last night, I got to play Sidereal Confluence here.
Yeah, I've seen people play it. And then as soon as I heard negotiations, I'm like, nope, I'm out. Not my thing.
It's funny because at Dice Tower West, we did a top 5 get out of my face list.
Yep.
And literally on my list was negotiation games. And Sidereal Confluence is literally a open negotiation game. It is, dare I say, one of the negotiation games now because that's virtually the primary way that you get resources. And it's a game literally about trading cubes, green cubes, blue cubes, gold cubes, black cubes, brown cubes. And you're just trying to get enough cubes that you can get more cubes to eventually get enough cubes to flip cards for points.
So cubes are a thing.
And you do that. Right. And you just do this by talking to everybody. You're all aliens and you have special abilities and all this other stuff. but everything is negotiable. The only thing you cannot trade are victory points.
Okay.
And it's just negotiation. But I was kindly invited by this wonderful person, Meeple Lady Online, Glory Hound, who does the Kickstarter segment on Board Game Breakfast, was in the game. Greg from Hooked on Geek was there. A wonderful group. It was a full game.
Wow.
9 people in this game, Mandy.
That's intense.
We had 2 long buffet tables butted up against each other just to hold all these cards and all these cubes. It was wild. And then 9 people are standing up, and like for 2 hours, they stand up and we just yell at each other for 10 minutes. I need black cubes. I need gold cubes. I got this. You want a planet? I need planets. Can you do this? And you're making 3-way trades, and you're questioning the sincerity of the people around you. It is a unique gaming experience. I will definitely play this again at a convention.
Oh.
I have zero desire to buy this game for myself, but I think for me, Sidereal Confluence is a great example of how wonderful board games are, because the game on paper, and perhaps the game in mechanically, it not necessarily for me, but gosh darn it, I had a great time during those 2 hours. The people were fabulous. They were getting into it. We all had great energy and were goofing off. So Sidereal Confluence was, for me, it'll be a convention experience that I would be happy to do again, but it is a thing. Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I look like I want to try it, but I'm like, that seems like, and don't get me wrong, I'm all about the interaction, but that seems like beyond my threshold, I think.
Yeah, it is definitely a thing for sure. But Arizona Game Fair, if you're local to this area, it's a delightful convention, very play focused. They have a little library. There are some vendors down here. I'm having a great time, and I would come back in a heartbeat. It's a lovely game convention. I'm having a ton of fun.
It sounds great. I like those smaller conventions. You get to meet a lot of fun people. Get to play games you probably thought you never would play. So it sounds awesome.
How about you, Mandy? You got any conventions coming up?
So actually coming up in May, it's more of a local convention. So we have Can Games, and it's local, but it's well known. I don't know if it's just well known across maybe Canada, maybe not anywhere else. And that's kind of one of our bigger conventions, and that's happening a long weekend in May. So I don't know if you all have this weekend. It's the Victoria Day weekend. I think it's just us.
Yeah, Victoria. We don't celebrate Queen Victoria in the U.S.
Fair enough. And I thought maybe you might call it something else, but yeah. So it's the May 2-4, so it's a long weekend, and I will be there volunteering in the library. And I always love volunteering because then I still get to converse with people, and then I get to also play games. So I'm kind of like, yes, I'm in the library, but I also get to sit with you and teach you games and play them. So I'll be there.
Way to work this system.
I know, right? I mean, it's fine. So myself and the Canada game group will be there teaching some games. So if anybody's in the area looking to come down to Ottawa, my hometown, I will be at Can Games May long weekend teaching some games. So drop by if you're in the area.
Awesome.
All right. I know we're kind of extending this intro a little bit, but there's just so much going on that we're excited about. So yes, I took a jaunt onto Kickstarter. I know. I said I was going to stay off of there, as Canadians were like, it's so expensive. But well, there was a game that caught my eye, and it's called Freshwater Fly. I've really been looking forward to this. Get it? Really?
Oh my gosh. I didn't get it. Oh, Mandy. Oh.
I'm sorry, I had to throw it out there. So if anybody wants to join in on the fun pun action, come on to Twitter. We just go back and forth. But if you're familiar with Coldwater Crown, and this is by Bellwether Games, Coldwater Crown is another fishing game. This is Freshwater Fly, which is about, well, fly fishing. So Coldwater Crown's great. I know you've played it, Suzanne.
Oh, yeah, I like it a lot.
I've played it. I've done playthroughs on it. It's so good. And I just like simple mechanisms, but still feeling you satisfied when you play the game. I love that kind of put down a token and then pull back something for different types of actions. It's great. And the Freshwater Fly looks like it has some of that similar fun type of action use. So it's on Kickstarter. I think it's on for another 25 days or so. Shipping to Canada is a problem. It's a bit expensive. I know they're trying to look into it, but if you do end up getting it, be like me, buddy it up with a friend to get 2 copies. So the shipping is less. So let's hope they cross our fingers that gets fixed soon, that shipping can go down. So Freshwater Fly by Bellwether Games. I just had to mention it because I really enjoyed Coldwater Crown, and I think this is going to be a hit. There you go.
Alrighty. Well, the last thing I wanted to mention is, as you probably know out there, but it doesn't hurt to remind you, that the JVMF auction ends quite soon. We've got about a week left. It ends April 6th. This is the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund is, of course, a charitable organization started by Tom in honor of his son that benefits gamers in their moment of need. And the JVMF has they've given to a lot of gamers and been there in that time when they had a little bit of a crisis. And what's more gamer than gamers helping gamers when they need it? And that's what JVMF is all about. Go online on Board Game Geek, check it out. There are hundreds and hundreds of items up there. There are beautiful custom art pieces, hard to find games, and we're talking games from 18XX to old goofy party games. You can find all sorts of treasures in there. There are miniatures, painting, donations. There are just tons of quirky, cool treasures. And don't forget that this is for charity. It's for a great cause. It's to help people like you and like me if we ever have an emergency. So go out there, find something that looks awesome, put a bid on it. And this is one of the primary ways that the JVMF raises funds every year. So please feel free to go online and check that out before April 6th. And you might find something super duper cool.
All right, so last night I decided to blow off the dust off of Thunderstone Quest. Yes, it has been at least 4 to 5 months since I last played one of the a part of our campaign. So we had the group together with a sub in, and we said, hey, let's get this to the table because people have been asking, how's your campaign going? So we jumped into game 3 because I think I'd previously talked about that, but a while back. So for those of you who are maybe just jumping into the podcast for the first time, I'm talking specifically about Thunderstone Quest, which is designed by Mike Elliott, Brian Reese, Mark Wooten. The artist is Jason Engel, Gunship Revolution, Matt Paquette, local guy, and David Sue. And it's published by Alderac Entertainment Group. And it retails for about 59 Canadian, 50 US, 2 to 4 players, and about 60 to 90 minutes. Even though our game last night took a little bit longer, but I will tell you why that happened. So Thunderstone, this is a re-implementation. It's a game that's been around for a long time. Fantasy deck building game. So that's the gist of where we're going. So, you're fighting monsters. There's heroes. You get weapons, items, and all of these things to help you fight these monsters. That's the general overview of the game. So like I said, we were on hiatus for playing it for about 5 months. So we had to literally relearn the game. It's not a difficult game, but then we realized there were some nuances we potentially might have missed in the previous game. So when attacking monsters, for example, you have physical fighting ability and then you have magic. And so for the longest time, I'm like, do you have to use just one type or can you use both? And you can actually use both. If you look at the book, it actually shows the physical and the magic and a plus. So yes. So that was like, yeah, did we do that last game? I don't remember. So there was a lot of questioning. Did we do these things correctly? But something that was cool, we got to bring over an item or weapon from the previous game. So something that was really interesting is that the deck builder, most deck builders, it's 5 cards that you have in a hand. With Thunderstone Quest, it's actually 6. And your starter deck is usually comprised of 12 cards, but every time you finish a campaign game, you get to pull in a weapon or item of your choice from the previous game. As long as nobody else has it, you can pull that in. So then you start with 13 cards and then 14 and then 15 and so forth. So that kind of threw us for a loop a little bit, but it's kind of nice that you have your starter cards, but then you start off with a nice kind of fun weapon. Something to note to be careful of. We couldn't remember. Yes, I know. I'm really bad at tracking these things. We're doing it now. Who played what character? So we're just like, sure, randomly. I think I was the magic. I did, pick that item. Let's go with that. You have to remember not to pick things that are too too over where you're starting. So, for example, you're a starting player, so you can only equip yourself with really basic things. Mm-hmm. If you pick a weapon or item that's really heavy duty, this is awesome, it might have an equip value of 4, but you're only able to carry 1 or 2. So now you're like, okay, great. You have to build yourself up in order for you to carry all these equipment. And sometimes that takes a while, and you find yourself not being able to use the thing you carried over to help you until later in the game. So that did happen with one of our players. They had something that had a really high value level to be equipped, and they were very low to start. So it took a long time to kind of build that up. So something to take note of. So those were some things that came out. The monsters in this game were treacherous. Yes, I know it's supposed to be difficult, but good gracious, they were hard. It literally was like one comes out. Oh, so when this monster is revealed, lose a card. Or when this monster is revealed, lose, some food or lose. So what was happening was I was kind of trying to get dinner ready at the same time while we're playing. So when it wasn't my turn, I'd run up and then I'd come down and be like, am I missing a card? Oh yeah, we pulled a monster. So, it's random. So just lose a card. Then I'd go upstairs, come back down. Did I just lose bread? Oh, that's right. We pulled this monster out and you had to lose the bread. I'm like, why is it every time I leave and come back, something is missing? Is this a joke? So the monsters were completely evil in this game. So there was a lot of bloodshed in this game, I feel, but you spent a lot of time trying to heal yourself, which I did way more of this game than I had done any other game. And I did find it took me a bit longer to build up my deck. I think I was just so focused on killing monsters with what I had. I should have taken more time to build my deck. It came late and that left me with a lot of wounds. And I don't think I did that properly. So overall, I think this was a rough game for us. I think we noticed a few things that we didn't the first time that we may have played incorrectly, like the whole magic and physical, using those together. Something else that was kind of weird when they talk about drawing cards on certain things, it's drawing off the top. It's not you get to pick or choose. So we had to make sure to really pay attention to that index because it matters how things are played in order, and then taking things off a deck, the top versus picking it yourself. You need to pay attention to that sort of thing. I feel that there was some missed opportunity here. I feel that this re-implementation of the game, I felt that now playing it again, like setting it up was tedious. I feel the box there should have been some layout, like this is the best way to set up your box sort of thing. And I'm sure someone's put one out online, but you shouldn't have to do that. There should be something to say, hey, this is how you should set up your box to make it a bit more conducive to being more efficient or learning the game. So I didn't really notice it as much the first couple times. I very much noticed it this time. So that was something. And the amount of setup for what the game was, it seemed like a lot. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so that it's funny how I never noticed until I had to relearn and do it. And I said, yeah, that seems a bit tedious. Some of the little rules could have been clarified. That was slightly irritating, but overall, that wasn't the worst of it. But I think that there were a couple people frustrated with the amount of setup, lack of clarification on certain things for what the game was. So going forward, now that we've had the relearn, I'm hoping the next game will be better. So I just think we did a few things maybe not the right way, and then having to relearn really kind of pushed us into like, oh, what do we get ourselves into? So I'm hoping the next game plays better. I did not win. I came in 3rd out of 4th because, like I said, I waited too long to push my deck, to kind of get my deck kind of sorted and kind of take a focus of what I wanted to do. So there you go. So that is Thunderstone Quest. I'm sorry that was so long, but I really wanted to give you detail because it's been so long since I played it. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't think you need to apologize. I've been playing through Rise of Queensdale, and I wasn't sure how much I should talk about it before I finished it, and I haven't finished it. I'm 8 games in, though.
Oh, you're way ahead.
I've played a lot of it at this point. And I think the thing that you just said about Thunderstone Quest that resonated with us is that we pile drive through a bunch of plays at a convention, and then we got back together at a regular game night and we said, okay, we're going to play Rise of Queensdale. And I think maybe my friends were a little faster to pick back up on it, but the relearning thing, even though it had only been a few weeks, really hit me. Yeah. When we were laying it back out and getting all the pieces out and just remembering the rhythm of the game and what I was aiming to do and kind of some of the rules intricacies, especially since the rules evolve in a legacy style game, was definitely something I felt as well. And so that resonates with me, but I should probably talk a little bit about that maybe in a future episode.
Yeah, so definitely we'll do like a back and forth. You do yours, I do mine. But yeah, this game was rough. So let's hope it's a bit smoother next time.
I hope it's better. All right. Well, next up, I wanted to talk about Cartographers, a role player tale.
Ooh.
For those of you who haven't heard of it before, Cartographers is actually a roll and write set in the role player world. I'm not going to go to episode 600 and not talk about some kind of roll and write. Now, come on. Do you even know me? Cartographers was actually designed by Jordi Adan, and it has art by Luis Francisco and Lucas Ribeiro. Thunderworks Games, of course, is the publisher on it. And if you're interested in picking this up, I have just a prototype. It's the box is actually an expansion box for another game with the computer printed out, Cartographers cover art like taped on, and it's adorable, and I love it. So I'm just playing off of a completed prototype of it, but you can pre-order it right now on Thunderworks site. It's $25 for pre-order, and it will include a little mini expansion if you decide to pre-order it. And I'm gonna suggest you do that. So Cartographers is what I call a card-driven roll and write game. So it's really based on card play, and you're gonna play through 4 seasons, and each season gets a unique scoring condition. And if you've played Isle of Skye, where each round of Isle of Skye, there's different scoring conditions, and you'll score A and C, and then B and D, and then A and B, and things like that. That's what Cartographers has as well. So there's 4 seasons, each has a scoring condition, but then you score A, B, B, C, C, D, A, D. So you play through 4 seasons, and you're scoring multiple things. And you've got a sheet, and it's got a grid. There's a couple things printed on it, like some trees and these little column icons on it. And then you start flipping cards, and the cards are going to have some 1 or 2 shapes on it, and then 1 or 2 terrain type icons on it. So the card flips over, everybody looks at it, and they pick the shape that they want and the terrain that they want to fill in. Now, some shapes will come with coins, and coins will help you later. And then you just draw it on your sheet. You can rotate or flip them freely, and then you fill it in with whatever terrain type you decided to select. Each of these cards has a little number on it, and each season has a limit. So if it's 8, when the cards flipped over hit that value, hit 8 or more, then that season's over, and you score, and then you move on to the next season. And that's pretty straightforward. The trick, there's a few tricks in it that come into play. First of all, that season scoring is diabolical. There's a number of cards for each season, and you shuffle those, and then you randomize what comes out for each season. So each game will feel quite different. And depending on how these season cards come out, how they combo, you will not be able to do everything that you want to do, which I love. You're going to be looking at these seasons, and you're going to be predicting what you think you can accomplish, what will score you the most points. Then you're going to be flexing a little bit as cards come out and you're not quite able to do what you want to do, that kind of thing. You will score based on forests along the edge, or plains and water that isn't touching, or having sections of your board, for example, rows or columns completely filled in, that kind of thing. Well, if you're filling in sections early in the game, that's really hard to do. So do you just give up on that? And how do you focus and try to plan ahead? I love that scoring variability and how that really drives your strategy for the game. And then there are also monster cards. And what happens is in each season, you shuffle 1 random monster card into the deck. And you may go through a season and not hit a monster. No big deal. But if you flip over a monster, I don't think they count towards your season limit, but they do. What happens when a monster card flips up, and it has a shape on it. You actually pass your sheet to your neighbor, and your neighbor draws the monster on your sheet. And then at the end of the round, you will score negative points for all the empty spaces around the monsters. So what happens is when you get that sheet back, all of a sudden you're spending a little bit of energy trying to fill in the squares around the monster before the round ends, which is really hard to do if you get the monster late in the round. Now, another game, not many roll and writes do this. In fact, the only other game I can think of off the top of my head that does something quite similar is the Penny Papers series. And I dislike this mechanism in the Penny Paper series. In one of the line, it's not a big deal, but in one of the, I can't remember which of the three it is, it feels very, very punitive and very, very aggressive. And it really can spoil a lot of the work. And it's a feel bad. And I don't care for it there. So when I saw the monsters in Cartographers, I was a little nervous on how that would go. I love the idea of more player interaction in roll and writes, which are typically very solitary, but doing it so that you're not having feel bads can be a little tough. Well, I'm glad that I can say that it's not that big of a deal because of the way the scoring works. Yeah, it can interrupt some of your patterns, but there's usually enough real estate on the board that you can work around it. And it might disrupt a little bit, but it doesn't completely hose that entire section of the game for you. And mitigating the monsters, if you throw energy towards it, it actually makes an interesting decision. Do I all of a sudden worry about these monsters? Okay, well, that's going to be -6 points there, but I'm going to get 10 points if I focus on completing my strategy over there. So I think there's a little bit of interesting prioritization that happens once a monster hits the thing. And then the monster comes out. So it's not getting exponentially more difficult. If you hit a monster, you deal with it and it comes out of the deck for the rest of the game, even though one's being added each season. So I personally actually enjoyed the level of interaction that did. I thought it was interesting. I think not everybody will love it, but for me, it actually worked and it feels thematic. So there you go. There's a couple other special rules. There's some ruins and you want to try to place things in specific areas, but it's pretty rules straightforward. But man, that scoring is, that makes you think, and I love that. So ultimately, I would say Cartographers is actually fairly deep. You're doing a lot of thinking, but it is very spatially oriented. So if you are not a spatial person, you could argue this is like a Tetris game or a polyomino game. If that is not your thing, Cartographers relies heavily on that, and you may find that frustrating. I love those kinds of games, so it absolutely clicked for me. The scoring is so strategic, and so I love it in Isle Sky. I love it in Cartographers. And I think that the variability in those scoring cards is great too. So games aren't feeling quite the same. You're really working things differently. The shapes and the terrain types don't change, but the way you score them does. And I think that's a really interesting variety to toss in. And honestly, for $25, I just think there's I think you're going to get your gameplay value out of that. Now, if you pre-order, it also includes a mini expansion, and I feel like the mini expansion is nice, especially because it gives you little extra abilities you can take advantage of that actually make it a little easier. It gives you a little more flexibility in how to stall or deal with the cards. So I think the mini expansion is great. It kind of softens a couple of the edges for me, and I think that's wonderful too, but you can play hardcore as well. So that's Cartographers. It's not available quite yet, but you can pre-order it. And I laminated it up, Mandy. I got it. I literally have it with me at Arizona Game Fair right here. That's how much I like it. So Cartographers is a big winner for me in the genre.
It's so funny because I looked at it and said, okay, so I went from Cartographers, so it's about maps potentially. And then I'm like, oh, but wait, it's a roll and write. And then scoring from Isle of Sky, that's a whole other conversation we'll leave for another segment on another show, if you catch my drift.
Nice.
And just from your description, it sounds like it's thematic, but then you throw in some monsters. So I'm like, okay, are we talking like Loch Ness, which would then make sense about the whole cartographer title? Sorry, I know this is a weird thing, but I'm trying to like find a connection. But then it does sound like it's complex, which in roll and writes, generally, I don't find you find a lot of those. So is it meant to be something that is on the heavier end of the spectrum, quote unquote, for a roll and write? And theme, do you find the theme does tie in well, or it's just a random theme?
Yeah, I think it's definitely on the quote unquote heavier end of the genre for sure. There's a lot of that scoring makes you really, really think, is it thematic? You're filling these things on a board and they're terrain types. So you're arguably you're drawing a map, and that's highly thematic. I think the monsters envision you're out there exploring the land and mapping it, and you hit a monster and you would draw the monster and think, I ran into this monster here. So I think that's as thematic as roll and writes can get. I will also point out, I don't think I mentioned this, the art, just like the art in Roll Player, the art is gorgeous. It's a really small thing, but these 4 season cards have a picture with a building and a tree or whatever. But each season, it's the same scene, but with the appropriate seasonal accoutrement, like snow or sunny fields or whatever. I love that detail. And the art is quite lovely in this game, too.
All right. Sounds like I might give it a go. It has spatial elements, so I don't think I'll be particularly good at it. But hey, why not? Let's give it a try.
Sounds good.
So now the next game I'm going to talk about is Camel Up, the 2nd edition. And yes, you heard me correctly. Camel Up. So I'm sure there will be some discussion about, is it Camel Cup? No, it's Camel Up.
Isn't that joke done with now?
Apparently not, because I've been seeing comments about it. So I'm sticking with this one. So this is designed by Stefan Bogan. Art is by Chris Quilliams, and the publisher is Eggertspiel and Pegasusspiel. And it runs for about $43 Canadian and about $40 US. I believe it is now available, because when I originally got it, it wasn't available in stores or online, but I think you can acquire it now. It's 3 to 8 players, and it plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. So it's quick kind of game. So this is a betting or wagering type game. So if anybody has listened to anything that I've talked about, betting and wagering is not generally my thing, but I know this is really popular, so we're going to jump in and see what I thought about it. So in the game, well, there are camels, and you're basically trying to race around the board. And so when we do a little setup, we have Egyptian pounds. So this is the money they use. We get a spectator tile. We get some cards, and they have our little symbol of the character that we're playing. And we get a partnership card. So that's something to remember, because it's only usable with 6 or more people. So we'll talk about that at the end. And then we're going to stack our pyramid tickets. Okay, and these are things that we'll acquire throughout the game. And then we have betting tickets as well. And they're stacked 5, 3, and 2. So the reason why they're like that is because if you are making bets, the first person to do so will get that top one, which is worth that amount of points if they are correct that color camel is ahead in the race. And then the next person gets one, it's worth 3 points, and then 2, and then there's nothing. The dice are really fun because they get placed into like a pyramid. And the previous pyramid in the other game was a bit different. This one is made out of like a plastic now. So you put them in, and when you're trying to get them out, there's like a little button you press, and the dice comes out. So that's something that we'll be talking about later. But we have some new camels in the game, and they're called crazy camels, and they're black and white. And this is going to change the direction that the way the camels move on the board. Okay. And yeah, so that kind of throws it a little bit. So that is basically the main change in the game, is that and potential negotiations, like a partnership later. Oh, there's that word again. Negotiations. So basic rules. If a camel lands on a space with another camel, you basically stack it on top. Okay. So when a camel moves, it also moves, and all camels riding on that camel move with it. A camel on top is considered in front of the camel that's on the bottom. So that's something important to remember. The crazy camel will carry camels on top counterclockwise, and it never accounts for any award. So if something's first or last, doesn't count. At the end of each leg, because we do several legs, you either gain or lose money from the bets. So for example, if you bet, the red camel was going to be head and it wasn't, you could be out some money depending on what it says on the card you have. And the end of a leg is when 5 of the 6 dice are revealed. So if you take an action where you're going to take a die out of the pyramid, and this is going to, the color of the die that comes out and the number, that's how many spaces that color camel is going to move. So a lot of people like that option. And basically when 5 of those dice have come out, that's to signify, hey, that's the end of a leg. The end of the game is, at the end of the game, the person with the most money will win. So basically you're trying to make it around the end of the board. The round ends when a leg ends when 5 of the dice come out. The game ends when you've crossed the finish line, basically, around the board. So on a turn, this is where you can claim one of your betting tickets, and that's where you pick the color who you think will be at the lead at the end of the leg. So we talked about that. You place or move your spectator tile to any empty space. So basically your spectator tile, if it's landed on, gets you some money, but it also pushes a camel either forward or backward, depending on the side of the tile that you placed. So it's very nice if you're like, oh, I just need this to jump ahead, but it's not always guaranteed that it'll be landed on. You can also take a pyramid ticket, and this is where you're going to reveal the die, and then you move the camels. So the gray die moves the black or white crazy camels, and if one crazy camel is carrying racing camels, you must move that color. If the crazy camel is sitting directly on top of the crazy camel, then you must move the one on top. All right, so this is where it throws off the original game a little bit. So you want to bet on the overall winner or overall loser. This is another action you can do. So there's a pile of cards that are face down, and these are going to happen at the end of the game to see if you're right as to who wins the entire game. So you have a set of cards that you have in each of the colors of the camels, and you can kind of throw those down who you think is going to win, who you think is going to lose as an action, face down, and at the end of the game, you go through them to see who was right, and you get points based on that. If you're wrong, well, you lose points, so that's not a good thing. And then you can enter into a betting partnership. So this, like I said, is only if you have 6 or more players, but you can choose another player who has a partnership card still with them, so it's face up. You give them their card, and basically, you're working together to kind of get those rewards together. So at the end, each person can choose one ticket of partnership and add its awards as if they had the ticket. So you're kind of piggybacking on their rewards. So you want to pick someone who's really good at betting. So it's a thing. All right. So that's the basic gist of it. And at the end of the leg, each start player gets the tile to the left of the player who took the last pyramid ticket, give rewards or penalties according to the tiles you claimed. And it'll tell you, if you won, this is the awards. If you lost, this is what you lose. And then you continue doing those scoring. So at the end of the game, player with the most money wins. That's the gist of it. So anybody who's played Camel Up, it's literally almost the same with the exception of the now partnership tiles and the crazy camels. So first thing I'm going to start with is this hasn't changed much with the exception of those little pieces I just described. However, for those who are familiar with Camel Up, you may find this like, ooh, that's amped up the game a bit because now we're changing direction. Camel Up for me, it's a light kind of fun game. I can play that through a lunch hour. It's great to bring at parties if you want something light. It's one of those games I don't necessarily need to know if I need to own both.
Oh, sure.
One would, do you know what I mean? One would be enough. If you don't have it, this would be a nice option to buy, even just because the art is fantastic. So I don't know if you've seen it, but when you open the board, it has like a nice tree that comes out. The colors are rich and vibrant. I'm like, oh, this is quite a scene in itself. Just that alone, it's like, this is wonderful. And you're like, how do they get the tree to stay so nice? And it's folded. Anyway, so care was taken in the art and the rebuilding of the game. And the pyramid is a big one because in the original game, it was paper. You had to put it like a cardboard. You had to put it together. There was an elastic that you would use like a mechanism that had an elastic. And so when you press the button for the dice to come out, it reminded me of those elastics I used to wear when I had braces and they were like so tight to keep your mouth shut. It was kind of like that, but bigger. And so a lot of them broke. So people had a lot of problems with it. So the new one is actually like a hard kind of plastic and the mechanism is a bit stronger built. So I appreciate that care was taken. The dice can get a little stuck sometimes, but it does seem it's better for longevity. So that is appreciated. Component quality is always really good. The game itself, like I said, the crazy camels do make it a little fun with the backward forward. So, but it does lengthen it a little bit. I did like the partnership, even though I'm not really big on negotiation. The partnership is kind of good. So if someone was struggling, you can pair with somebody to be like, hey, I want some of your rewards. Gimme, gimme, gimme. It's like that song. What is it? Money, money, money. That's literally what I was singing the whole time when I did it. Because I'm like, I'm getting all the money. So, long story short, I enjoyed it for what it was, but it's not going to be one of those games like, oh, I must run and get it if you don't have it. It's nice if you have a family. It's nice if you have people like in a setting that you need a game that plays a larger amount of people. I like that it accommodates, and it's not like, oh, goodness gracious, is this game over yet? And it's not a party game per se. So I like that it doesn't fit into that kind of category. So if you like that, the way I'm describing that, I think you will like this. I have it. I enjoy it. I definitely have a group that are hardcore love this game. So for me, I can bring it to a party and get people together or play it with my nephew. And in that sense, so overall, it's a fun little game. It's a good game. A lot of people who start in gaming like to have this game. It's just not one for me that hits the table due to the fact that I play different types of maybe more heavier Euro games, but it doesn't mean I still can't enjoy it. For those who own Camel Up, I mean, if you want an update, I think it's great. I don't necessarily know if you need to have those little bits, but if you're like I said, those hardcore and you really love it, then maybe you do want it to replace the one you already have. Or have 2 copies. So, just saying. So, I mean, I have 3 copies of Kanban, so I can't really say anything. So that is Camel Up, the 2nd edition.
I will say that Camel Up was replaced by another game for me, but it has a charm to it. And I would definitely, it's a game I would always play, but for me, I have other preferences. But I agree with what you said that it's great. A lot of people who are kind of just discovering games, Camel Up's a great example of what games can do that's different and fun and dynamic and visually appealing. So I'm glad you gave it a try. I haven't tried the new one, I admit. I wanted to flip gears and talk about some penguins. Down with camels, up with penguins. Let's start a fight. Let's start an unnecessary fight here.
That legitimately just reminded of, and I love him, bless his soul, Benedict Cumberbatch. If anybody is listening to this, have you ever heard him say penguins?
Oh, he says it oddly, doesn't he?
He says penguins. And it was the most adorable thing because he's like, oh my goodness. Like, anyway, must watch if you haven't seen it. It is adorable. So now that you say penguins, that's what I thought of.
Well, I will do my best to say it. Not penguins. Like Benedict Cumberbatch. I have been playing a game called A Pleasant Journey to Neko. This is a game that I picked up at Essen. It's actually from a Taiwanese publisher. And that, again, is one of the reasons I just love Essen is that a number of the Asian publishers that don't make it to American conventions will go to Essen. And it's an opportunity for me to grab up all these treasures. The game's designed and the art is done by City Low. And the publisher is The Wood Games. Now, the other thing I picked up from them was they have the license for Matryoshka, the card game, and they just did the most charming art for Matryoshka, and I just love it. So I had to have, even though I think this is the 2nd or 3rd copy of Matryoshka I own, but I had to have it.
He's with us in multiple games here. It's a thing.
We have an illness, Mandy.
I know.
But A Pleasant Journey to Neko is about visiting the Antarctic harbor of Neko to see penguins. Just such a lovely theme. I love that. And the game is really about planning your trip and traveling as far as you can to see as many sights as you can. But you have to be a little bit cautious because you don't want to scare the penguins. They're not used to all this stuff, right? So you have to be a little cautious in there. Pleasant Journey to Neko is a dice drafting game. And I mean dice drafting literally because most dice drafting games, you roll a bunch of dice into the center table and people take one at a time. No. In A Pleasant Journey to Neko, you have a handful of 6 dice, you roll them, you pick one, and then like card drafting, you actually hand that bundle of dice to the person next to you without changing the face values. And I will say, just up front, that is the part of the game I like the least because it's a little fiddly. But you roll the dice, you pick the one, and then you pass this little hand of dice, and it's a little awkward, but you know. It plays in 4 rounds, so it's predictable and you can plan ahead. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to end up with a little pool of dice, and then those dice are used to activate different actions, to gain cards that will get you shipping lanes and buildings and fish and oil so that you can go on this journey. It's really a game about managing dice drafting and managing resources with an auction element, because one of the actions you can take beyond getting fish or getting rid of some bad stuff and things like that is there is a little tableau of cards which represent buildings essentially. And once you have this pool of dice, you have a couple of free actions or special actions you can take. And then one of the actions is you can put dice out on a card to indicate that you're bidding for it. And ultimately, the player with the highest pip value on a card will win that card and get to add it. And you will win the right to purchase that card, I should say. You don't win the card. You just get the right to buy it if you want to.
Oh, wow.
And then the other players, you lose those dice for that round, but you get fish as kind of a compensation. So it's not a total loss if you don't win the card itself. You're going to add these cards to what are shipping lanes below your player board. And this is a part of the game I really, really like. You have a row of cards represents a shipping lane, and you can max out at 5. And along with the ability on the card, and there's a variety of things, they're going to produce resources or give you abilities of certain kinds. There are little icons on the edges of the card. And as the shipping lane develops and the cards go next to each other, those little icons meet and form a placement square. So one half will have a number, like a 1 or 2 die, and then the other half will be the benefit. And then in the future, as you're moving along, that becomes a place that you can use to activate with a die, or you can have these ships that can activate it as well. And I love that because it adds just another strategic element as you're looking at these cards. And I found that especially for getting cargo, I've leveraged that a number of times when I'm, oh gosh, I got to get a cargo cube. Oh wait, that card has a cargo icon. I don't need anything else on that card, but the icon I need. So I really like that little subtle detail that adds just a little extra notch of complexity to the game that I think is great. There are cards that are ports in that cargo. Ports have little squares on them, and that's places for you to deliver cargo to. So you have to gather cargo somehow, and then you can freely deliver it to these ports. And then if you fill up a port, those will usually open up a lot of points for you. Now, you've laid out these cards for shipping lanes. There's the ability to buy extra shipping lanes so you can have multiple rows of cards going at once. And then there are boats to travel down those fishing lanes. And you can buy multiple boats, and they get exponentially more expensive. And as you go, you spend oil to move these boats down the line of these cards that you're building up. And there are places on cards themselves that you can stop, and maybe it'll give you an oil barrel itself or something else. And now you can stop at those little new spots that you've created by joining cards together. There's bonuses you can get if you combine a die and a boat, sometimes things like that. There's a lot of little intricacies in here that when you play the game, it's fairly intuitive, but it just ups the gameplay a little bit for me, which I really, really like. As you go down these shipping lanes, you will get, the farther you go, the more points you'll get. There's bonuses for who went the furthest. And you can actually send ships down, multiple ships down the same shipping lane. So you're looking at the bonuses it gives you, the points it gives you, and you're like, oh, do I want to open up a new shipping lane, or do I just want to send more boats down the same shipping lane? That's an interesting part of the game too. So you're going to play through these 4 rounds. There's mid-game scoring, there's end-game scoring, there's little variable scoring tiles that mixes up what you're trying to do from game to game, which adds just a nice touch of variability, which is really, really cool. And it's fairly, I wouldn't call it heavy, but it's got some thinkiness to it. And I am just really enjoying it. First of all, the reason why I kind of emphasized earlier that City Low did the art and the gameplay. I love the gameplay and I love the art. The card design is great. They're pretty to look at. They come together in a lovely way. And I think that just shows a tremendous amount of talent. The bidding for those cards I mentioned can get intense, and it's fascinating as people are adding dice and they're looking at what they have and what they want to accomplish. What could they do with those dice otherwise? How much do they need that card? That kind of thing. The bidding is actually fairly intense, which I find to be really exciting. Another little twist in this game is how the dice work for actions. Lower value dice are better for activating actions. It actually enables you to have more options. But higher value dice are better for bidding. And that creates another great decision point in the game of, as you're drafting these dice, oh, I really need these actions and I have to have at least a 2. But yikes, I really need that card. I need 5s and 6s. So what are you going to take? That little detail. I didn't get it when I first played. I'm like, wait, low value dice? That's weird. Who does that? But then you start to play it and you see that pull, that tug of war between actions and bidding. And it really works. So I love the way the cards play off of each other. I have found that there's a number of strategies you can pursue, whether it's opening multiple shipping lanes or whether you're going for penguin parks or whether you're going for ports, all that kind of stuff. I really, really like this game. I will now point out that I've said how much I like this game. I don't know how you can get it. So...
Oh, no. Because I was literally just about to say, ooh, this sounds good. I know I've seen it and I would like to get my hands on it, but I can't get it.
I am so sorry. One of the things I love doing on this podcast is talking about games, especially from the Asian market, that don't necessarily hit the Western market very often, because there are some real treasures and they're just not getting the distribution I think that they deserve. And I love sharing this information with everybody, not to create envy, but to create demand and to create interest, because the more people that are interested in these games, the more likely it is the publishers will work and seek them out and try to bring them over. Now, I'm sure that there are ways you can order them from online stores and things like that. There are great online stores that focus on importing and selecting treasures from other markets. So I would search for it online. I haven't made an effort to do that myself. But A Pleasant Journey to Neko, it's a real winner. It's got some different things going on and it comes together in a beautiful way. So check it out online, see if it's something that interests you, talk about it, and maybe we'll get lucky and it'll be easier to get in the future. And Mandy, I'll find a way to bring my copy so we can play it together.
I know, it'd be great, because I feel bad now. I'm giving you a hard time. And, well, the next game I'm going to talk about is pretty much in the same boat. Get it? In the same boat.
Oh, my God. Mandy, is the whole episode going to be this way? Because
pretty much. It's early. So, yeah.
If you're a fan of high-quality roll and write games, don't forget to check out Hex Roller from Renegade Games. It's quick to learn, easy to play, but challenging to master as you figure out how to make the most of each roll. Look for Hex Roller at your local game store or online today.
So let's sail away into Airship City.
Oh, I'm so...
Okay, so before we jump into this, I do have to make it known that this game is on the list courtesy of Suzanne.
No,
No, but it's true. I knew nothing about this game until we were making up our list for Essen, and you talked about this game. I'm like, oh, it sounded interesting. I saw the price. I almost had a heart attack, and I was like, oh, that's a little rich for me right now. And then after you talked about it, hyped it up, I was like, okay, that's it. I'll take a chance, you know? And it literally was singing that song to me. Take a chance, take a chance, take a chance on me. It literally was singing that to me. So I had to snag a copy. So thank you, Suzanne. And we'll tell you why it's a good thank you in a moment.
All right. I'm looking forward to hearing all about it.
Perfect. So this is Airship City, designed by Masaki Suga. Artist is Sayori Shibata, and the publisher is Analog Lunchbox. So I don't have an exact price, but I believe it was between 50 and 60 euros when I purchased it at Essen, so in Germany, but I do not believe it is available in North America. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that, Suzanne.
No. You're doing it too.
I know. It's only the one. So in the game, you are literally trying to build efficient, like airships that are efficient, and you're trying to do so efficiently. That's a lot of efficiency. And you need to donate airships to cultivate a positive relationship with the city, renovating your workshop, hiring workers. And this is the best part. You get to piggyback off of other engineers to acquire resources. I know that sounds a bit strange. So you can contribute to the city's development by not only donating to the airships, but also by participating in public facilities and participating in trade. That's the gist of the game. So just to give you a little bit more insight, in the game, we have our player board, and this is where we have, can manage our workshop and whatnot. And then the board itself is actually a setup of tiles. It's in a grid. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how many. They might be 5 by 5. I might be incorrect on that, but it's a grid of tiles. And these tiles, when you land on them, are going to give you different types of resources. So, simple enough, something you can do on your turn. You only start with a couple of workers. And then you think, okay, that might be enough to start. Well, no, it's kind of like Caverna, where you kind of eventually want to get more in order to reach tiles that are a little bit farther from you, or, well, just to get more resources. So here's the thing. When you land on a space, so let's say you land on a space and it gives you wood per se, and somebody else is in that space, well, guess what? They get wood or whatever. There's a little hand symbol with, whatever resource. They get an addition that resource as well. So this is that whole piggyback thing. So basically try not to land where other people are, because you're basically just giving them additional resources. So it can be good, but it can also be bad. You also can't land in the same space as one of your pieces. It'll actually bounce you into the next space. So it's kind of good if you want to project forward on the board, but not so great if you're already there and you're like, I need to be in that specific space. So that's kind of another thing where it can be good and it can be bad. So the main board is really neat for that. And it's movable. So there is actually a space that allows you to move the tiles, either, moving rows or columns, kind of bumping them off and then into the next end of that column or row. So the board is movable. So sometimes you're like, oh, this is great. It's perfect. And then your turn comes up and you're like, oh, wait a second. That tile that was now in the corner down here is at the top left of the board. Oh, my goodness. So you really have to be on your toes the whole time. Additionally, these tiles eventually can be kind of what's quote unquote upgraded. So they get flipped. And then there's even better bonuses. So if you've upgraded something in your workshop, so this is something on your personal board, let's say it's wood, and that color, so brown, is on that tile, and it says, oh, when you land on this tile, you're going to get an additional resource. So these are based on the ones that have been upgraded. So getting your workshop updated on your board is great because you have different things. You have gears, you have wood, you have steel. I'm missing one more potentially. Money is the other thing. So, but these are things that you can get additional things of. And you can also get additional workers, which I highly recommend. I don't generally tend to do it because it's expensive, but it's worth it. And I think that generally leads to getting a lot of things in the game to get done. Then you have the scoreboard, which is interesting because at the top of the scoreboard is kind of like a market. So when you are donating these airships and then, selling them off, this is how you acquire money. And every time, let's say you sell in the column that is wood related, then that column on the scoreboard goes down by 1. So basically it gets less and less valuable as it's being sold. And once it hits a certain number, you can still sell it, but you're not going to get as much for it when you do that. So they have that for the different types of resources. So that's something that I thought that was really cool during the game. And it's neat because it's on the same board as the scoring. So you'll notice in this game, everything is, I don't say that it works together, but they try to maximize everything. So you don't have separate boards for separate things. Sometimes it's the same board, maybe just split into 2 parts. So I thought that was really neat. Then we have the other board, and this is when I was talking about where you're donating your airships or potentially selling them. So when you're donating them, this is where you can have a majority. So having so many of your seals in the different types of kind of airship areas, I guess you could say. So they have one that's allotted for more wood. There's one that's for the gears and that sort of thing. You get points. So at the end of the game, having majority in these areas get you points. But keep in mind, you can sell them off to get money. So that's a decision that you have to make at some point during the game. So I think the game ends. There are a set amount of rounds, and when those rounds have expired, the game is over. And then at the end of the game, you basically just total victory points. There are a couple areas on the board you see who's won majority in those areas, and they'll get additional points. But after that, basically you count out the points. Whoever has the most points wins. So it's hard to picture, but I think you got a general sense of the game. I love the art. And people are like, oh, it's so nice, right? The tiles are really pretty. And the colors it's weird because they're muted, but it's applicable. Like you're thinking of airy airships, you know what I mean? So the colors I find lend themselves to the theme, and it's very soft. And even the outside of the box is very clean looking, but still nice. I don't know how to describe it, but every time someone sees the box, they're like, oh, that's really nice looking. Like it's not cluttered with unnecessary things. And the game is like that. It's not cluttered with unnecessary things. Like you'll find the scoreboard, is used for dual things. So it counts the rounds, but it also is a place where we have our points. Everything has a place, and they try and use as little space as possible, which I appreciate because there are so many games that take up so much table space. I'm looking at you, Castles of Burgundy, the card game, and it's not, and it's not necessary. You know what I mean? So that's such a small box for that card game I was talking about. It takes up an entire table versus this game. It's a big box, and it takes up a smaller imprint on the table. So I really enjoyed that. The game itself, it does give you opportunities to kind of catch up. So everybody starts with the 2 workers. I do like the fact that if you're landing on a spot, you can acquire resources. Basically, if you're there, it's like, yeah, come to this spot, give me some resources, So I like that you can kind of piggyback off of that. And it does make it tougher when people start moving things around. But so not only can it affect you, but it affects other people as well. So you're on that kind of even playing field, so to speak. And I know for myself, I don't generally have a lot of workers, but then I really look at donating airships and then selling them to get money. So for me, I look at that mechanism, and I know somebody else did the same thing and did really well with that versus, and I think I might not have mentioned this, but there are like contracts that you can complete as well, like objectives, and they also give you points. They're not a ton of points, but something else to kind of push you forward. The thing with the contracts is they expire. So you get it in a certain round, it has a number on it, and then the next round it might go to the next spot, and then by this third round there, well, it's gone, and that's negative points for you. So you don't want that. But these are other little ways that you can get points. So there are a variety of ways of getting points. I like that. I like that the board changes. That's interesting. I do find the game a little long. And when I've played it with anybody, they've always said it's maybe I wouldn't say two, maybe one round too long. Because you almost get to that point where you've done so much. It's like, you're almost running out of things to do a little bit. You've flipped over quite a few tiles on the board. You've contributed to the airship, donated to the airship spaces. So that's filling up really quickly. You want to still have that feeling at the end of the game, like, I have things to do and I don't have enough time to do it. Okay, I need to do this. And, you start planning strategically what things you need to do. It was just too open at the end and it did feel a bit of a drag. Other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed the game. Anybody I've taught it to has really enjoyed it. It doesn't look like it would be thinky, but it is. And I think that changing board is what drives that. So that is Airship City. So thanks, Suzanne. I love it.
Awesome. Alrighty, we will wrap up with another roll and write. Sorry, everybody. Look, there's just a lot of them coming out right now, and I feel honor bound to play as many of these as I can. And interestingly enough, I didn't even realize this until I was writing up some show notes here that Rolling Ranch is the same designer as Cartographers that I just talked about a little bit ago. So Rolling Ranch designed by Jordi Adon. This one has art by Weberson Santiago, who, so talented. Just love Weberson's style of art. You'll see it in this, one of the versions of Coup has it, just really beautiful art. Take a look at it. And then it's being published by Thundergrift Games. Mandy, you may remember when we were at Essen, I pulled you all around that darn game fair trying to track down all the roll and writes that I thought were being produced there, right?
Oh, I remember this. It was this one and another game, but
it
yes,
was this and Naptanaben. Naptanaben. Where's that Naptanaben?
Did you ever find that, by the way?
I finally got it offline, yeah.
Okay, got it.
And Rolling Ranch was one that I'm pretty sure the BGG listing said it was going to be available, but for whatever reason, it didn't make it there. And I was very, very sad because I was very excited to try it. So I ended up pre-ordering it on their website instead, and it arrived. And so I've been given that a whirl. If you end up being interested in the game, you can also order it direct from Thundergrift's site. It is €15 plus shipping. So to the US, it's $20 or €20, which, not bad. All right.
So Canadian, what's that, $50?
Like $370 or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm just kidding.
In Rolling Ranch, you are trying to rescue farm animals and build up your little ranch. And component-wise, it's a couple of completely custom dice. You get a little pack of goal cards and then a pad of score sheets. Dice. Each face of the die has a lot of information. So it has animals. It has an animal. It has a number. It has a heart or not, and it has little marks on it. So you'll have pigs or cows or chickens, and then these marks that represent wood or nails on it. On a turn, the active player is going to roll those two dice, and then everybody gets to make a decision based on it. So it's one of those games where everybody can be involved every turn, which I always enjoy. When the dice are rolled, players make a decision. They can choose the animal from one die and match it with the number from the other die. And then the number if you do that, then you draw that animal on a space on your sheet that matches that number. So if I have a pig and a 3 on another die, I can draw a pig on a 3 spot on my board. Otherwise, there are those little marks I mentioned that represent wood or nails. You can either take an animal, or you can take the resources from both dice and mark those off on your sheet instead. So a bunch of wood or a wood and a nail or what have you. And really, you are working to fill up the pens because it's on your sheet. It's a big hexagonal tableau. And you're working to fill up the individual pens that are kind of demarked on the sheet with animals. Or if you use those resources, there are buildings along the side of the sheet, and you can fill them in with resources to try to complete their requirement to actually complete the building. And buildings will pretty much unlock abilities that give you forward flexibility in terms of what else you can do on your sheet in a future turn. Now, pens will score more if you have a single type of animal in them. So you want to kind of try to focus to get all cows in a pen, which will give you the most points because cows are more valuable than chickens, or all chickens, that kind of thing. If you mix them up, you can mix up animals, you'll just get fewer points for the pens. And if you remember, I mentioned that some of the dice have hearts on them. If the dice, when you roll them, both dice have a little heart on it, then animals will make new animals together. So if you have two animals of the same type in a pen and there's a spare space and two hearts roll up, you will get a new animal of that type in the pen. Aww. Isn't that
so
sweet? So you can kind of get freebies that way as well. So there's a little bit of planning around that. The game ends when somebody completely fills in their pens. You score them up. There are goal cards, so everybody will get a secret goal card at the beginning of the game that'll give you extra points for a couple of conditions, having a certain number of cows or having a certain number of pens that are filled up with a certain animal or that kind of thing, or building related. There's a variety of them. So you'll score your pens, you'll score whatever your gold cards is, and then, person with the most point wins. It's very straightforward from a rule set point of view, which is nice. I really, like I said, I really like that everybody gets to play at the same time, and the box itself says you can play 2 to 20. And the reason why they cap it at 20 is because they give you 20 goal cards. And to play the game fully, everybody needs a goal card. So if you had, realistically, you can play with as many people as you want. Except the dice are chunky, but they're not mammoth. And I don't know what, like 60 millimeter, there might be a little bit bigger than that, but there's a lot of information on it. So there's a number, there could be a number, a heart, a resource icon, those are on the corners, and then an animal in the center. And what we have found is they can be hard to see. So if you've got a group of, if you're going to, it plays very smoothly with a lot of people, assuming they can see what's on the dice. So what we are finding is that when the dice are rolled, we say, okay, your choices are pig on a 3 or chicken on a 2. Pig on a 3, chicken on a 2. Or you can grab wood. And is that a nail? Yes, that's a nail. There's a little bit of clarity around that. And their dice, they're very nice quality dice. But if you're playing with a group that either has not great eyesight or it has to spread out a lot because you're playing with a large group of people, the visibility on the dice is a little bit of a bummer in that scenario. But, your mileage will vary on that front. We also thought it was funny that the pens, all these little hexes with all these little numbers, it's in one big hex tableau. It looks great. It's kind of thematic and that's fun. But honestly, they could have just laid them out in rows, in different length rows, because there's no adjacency. So other than making sure the animals are in the same pen, in the same grouping, it doesn't matter what animals are actually next to each other beyond that. That's not a criticism. I actually like the hex. I think it looks nicer that way than a bunch of rows, but I thought it was interesting that it really actually doesn't matter what's next to each other. And you have these hexes. And I think just from a gamer mindset, you go in and you think, oh, hexes. Okay, well, all this is really good. And it doesn't. And which actually simplifies the rule set. So that's okay. Overall, for me, Rolling Ranch is another lovely entry into the roll and write world. It has a lot of things that I enjoy in it. It's always fun to draw instead of just scratch things out or what have you. And there's a cheat sheet. They're like, okay, if you don't want to draw a chicken, just draw a triangle. But, come on. Don't you want to?
It doesn't look, draw the animal.
Come on, little piggy. Come on now.
And do you get to make noises as you draw them? Because, that is also fun.
Yeah. It's just not the same game if you're not going, moo.
Bah. Yeah, I love it. I got to do it.
Bah. There's no sheep in these games. Maybe that's expansion.
Oh, shoot. There's no sheep? Okay, well, my apologies. I got a little ahead of myself there.
Maybe you're spoiling their future expansion. Rolling Ranch, if you enjoy roll and write games and you especially enjoy the ones that can play a lot of people, I like it. I think it's delightful. It's very straightforward and light, but it definitely has some interesting choices in it. Definitely a nice filler or end of game wrap up game, especially if you have a larger group and people have split up and you want to come together and kind of wrap up for the night. So as long as you've got good vision or are willing to kind of collaborate on what's on the dice, you can play it with a huge group and it plays quite nicely that way. So that's Rolling Ranch from Thundergriff Games.
Well, I know you were looking for this hard, and now you finally have it. So as you were talking about it, I'm like, well, let me peruse on the website here. And it's very nice, actually. It has some digital representation of how it plays. So, I see some dice rolling with the animals and exactly all the things you've said. Circling the number, drawing in, there's the side where you're scratching off the resource that shows on the die.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Okay, yeah. So, which is great. So I'm just basically saying this is a really nice resource at the website. It gives you a nice detailing of how to play, how to score, and it's very visual. So by looking at it, I have now put one in the cart. I just now need to check the Canadian shipping, but we'll get to that in a moment.
I love it.
Let's discuss those previously discovered board game gems in Shelf Staple. All right, so let's get ready to walk down the runway in some ready-to-wear. Come on, you must know what game I'm talking about. Pret-a-porter. It literally translates to ready to wear. No? I got nothing? Okay. All right. Oh, boy. So, Pret-a-porter.
Come on, Andy. Between us, ain't nobody gonna go, Suzanne, you know about fashion, right? Come on now.
I feel like the listeners will know about, maybe a select few may know what that actually means. I don't know. So, Pret-a-porter, which is designed by Piotr Harashchuk and Ignacy Trevicek. Artist is Merush Ganzel and Thomas Jedrzejczyk. We also have here Kwanchai Moria, Mikhail Orax, and Derek Zabroki. And the reason why there might be some names on here that may not have been there previously is because, and someone I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong about this, but this game is coming to Kickstarter, I believe, in the summer or close to the summer. So there will be some design changes to this game, specifically the cover art and so forth. So this particular version that I have played and I own was done in 2010. All right, so there'll be some additions coming soon. So this is in a weird place for me because I've played it. I love it. I own it. But I'm even more excited to get the new version. So I'm does that still consider a shelf staple? I'm going to say yes, it still meets the requirements. So Pret-a-porter, don't let it fool you. While it is about fashion, it is actually an economic strategy game, but the theme is, fashion. So in the game, players run clothes companies, and basically you're trying to be on top during these fashion shows. Wow, that's about accurate. And it can get pretty crazy in the real world. Yes, I used to work in the fashion world, so I know all about it. So in the game, players get to open new, branches of their company and outlets. They want to hire workers. Basically, we're trying to put together a really nice collection and gaining kind of new abilities or capabilities. So the game actually happens, it's over a bunch of rounds, but then there's quarterly held fashion shows. And in these fashion shows, players get to put together a collection of clothing and show it. So the public, media, experts, and all of these people are taken into consideration. So in the game, you want to win stars, not celebrities, or maybe celebrities, but stars are points in this game. So in the game, I'll just give you a kind of brief overview of how it looks. You have a board, and on the board, you have cards that you want to acquire, but you take turns, and it's decisions, right? Do you go somewhere first before somebody else does? Because you have a limited spaces for each type of area on the board. Maybe you want to get some cards that are going to help generate some money or give you some better abilities throughout the game. Maybe you're trying to get more cards to get into this specific collection you're trying to cultivate. But maybe you want to get there before somebody else does, because maybe someone else is trying to show off the same collection. There's another space where you're trying to get resources. You're that's easy enough. Well, here's the thing. It gets more expensive. So if you go to the first kind of area, there's only a couple spots. So if you miss out on that, you can go to the second area, but now these resources cost $3 or $4 more. And then the last spot, it's just insanely expensive, but maybe you have to go there because there's no more room left. There's also another space that provides you fame, which is important because when you're showing off your collection in these quarterly fashion show, the person who has the most fame might get some points, or the person who has more celebrity status has more points. So there are a variety of things to consider. So there's a certain amount of rounds, and at the end of those rounds, the person with the most money / points wins the game. It's pretty straightforward. So this is a keeper. I'm sorry. Anything with fashion just instantly grabs my eye, but the fact that it's an economic, strategic, heavy game with fashion, it's a dream come true. Can you believe they were going to change this to video games as the theme?
I can believe it. But I was extremely happy when I heard that they had pivoted away from that. And I think that enough people spoke up and said, no, we want different uncommon themes in games. So please keep Pret-a-Porter because it was such a rare uncommon theme. So I'm with you on that one, Mandy. I'm so glad they kept the theme.
I'm excited, and I'm so happy to see that a lot of people that probably you wouldn't think would speak up were like, no, this is great. The game is so good, and we're glad to see a different theme. And this comes to mind like games like Rococo and stuff. People love that. It's different. So I think this is a game you just need to have on your shelf, not just because it's pretty and going to be even prettier in the Kickstarter, because there's actually some meat in this game, some thinking, and it's fun. So I really like the tense decisions, having that limitation on the spot. So like you had to get there before someone else, but that you may be giving up something else. I like that kind of tension in a game. And the theme obviously just roped me right in. So that is Pret-a-Porter. And yes, I am very much looking forward to getting a copy with the new Quan Chai art on the cover in the Kickstarter in the summer.
So that one escaped me. I do not own it. I have not.
Oh, well, you have to get it now.
Yes. And so it's a total instaback. It's a total instaback for me. I'm going to jump in quickly. I almost forgot. Now, the rules, I will admit, are a little not clear in certain areas. So there were a few moments of frustration because there were some things that were not clear and could have actually really impacted the game. I won. So of course I was like, oh, no, don't worry about it. But no, it is important because there were some factors, like there were some stars on the card and we needed to know when to specifically like action something. And it may have affected potential points later on. So yes, I will be open admitting there were some frustration with the rules. I'm hoping with the reprint that those rules will be clarified and will be much clearer for people to read. So there you go. Alrighty. I don't know if this is analogous to kind of your situation with Pret-a-Porter, but I wanted to remind everybody about Factory Funner, which I think I'm cool on the shelf staple parameters here. But Factory Funner itself was published in 2016, which is maybe a little recent. But okay. Factory Funner is really just an update of a game called Factory Fun, which is from 2006.
I own Factory Fun unplayed.
Oh my goodness gracious. But you played Factory Funner, so.
I have with you, so
exactly. Yes. Factory Funner. So that's my, I think I'm good. We're going to go with Factory Fun or 2006, that kind of thing. Factory Funner, the designer is Corné van Moorsel, and the artist is Stephen Tu. And this is a tile laying game about building a machine. So each player is going to get a big board with a hex grid printed on it, and you'll get some little cardboard pieces that look like bottles of goo, and there'll be a big pile of tiles, of hex tiles, with a bunch of wacky machines on it. And then there is a massive pile of piping tiles, which are just like little thin rectangular ones or curved pieces and things like that. But they're literally pipes that you'll be placing on your board. What's going to happen is everybody's going to get random assortments of tiles dealt to them face down. And you put that in a little stack, and that is your game timer because you're only going to play through, I think, 8 or 9 rounds. I don't remember exactly the number of rounds. So you're going to have a stack, and then when everybody's ready, everybody flips up the top tile of their stack and puts it in the middle of the table. And then there's a brief... there is a speed element to the game, and it's right here. So what's going to happen is all those tiles are going to go to the center of the table, and everybody is racing to look at the tiles and figure out which one is best for them and grab it first, because whatever tile you grab is the tile you get to place on your board. If you're the first one to grab a tile, you actually take a point hit. You take a negative point token. And if you're the last one and you just take whatever tile you end up with, you actually get a little 1 point bonus tile just to kind of soothe maybe not getting what you can use. And then you've got to deal with the tile that you got, the little machine part that you have. And on these tiles are going to be arrows showing input and numbers showing output. There's little dots. It's probably a little difficult to describe, but you're going to have machines and they all have quirky names on them. They're actually really clever. I love what they did with it in terms of goofy machine names on these tiles. So you're going to have a tile. It's going to have input and output indicators, basically in all the primary colors of the game, like yellow, green, blue, or red. And what you're going to be doing is you're looking for a place on your board to place this tile so that you can connect it to the rest of the machine. But hopefully what you're making do is the right colored gel or chemical or whatever it is flow through the pipes, through the machines so that you're fulfilling the requirements. So if this machine has a 3 input red, you've got to find a 3 output red to go into it. But of course, that the one that you have that has an output, well, maybe it also is inputting yellow. So you got to figure out what now you've got to close that loop as well. So you're grabbing these tiles and you're trying to make it work, but what you're going to find is that you're going to end up creating fairly complex networks of piping to put all these things together and arrange pipes so that all the goo flows in the right directions and fulfills the requirements. You get bonus points if you can make machines flowing to each other because you start with these big reservoirs that guarantee output in a color. So you're not limited that way. But if you can make output from a machine into another machine, you get bonus points, which are really, really powerful. And you want to try to do that. And it's very, very puzzly ultimately. Inevitably, you're going to accidentally get a tile that you can't quite make work or is really difficult to make work because along with placing that tile, each tile has a point value on it. And you will get the points for that tile minus the number of pieces you play to get it on the board. So every piece of pipe that you lay to connect it to your machine is going to detriment you a point from that tile score. And I mean, I have had, oh, look, a 9-point tile. Ooh. And then 20 pieces of piping later, I have a lot of because that is a thing.
Absolutely.
I love this game. I love it. It's so frustrating. I am horrible at this game. I'm not super good at properly identifying the tiles when they come out in the center, but I really do love the puzzle of making my machine work on my board as best I can. You can dismantle parts. You can't move machines, but you can dismantle pipes and rearrange pipes between tiles too, which is nice, but it costs you points, of course. It is very thinky. Once you get that tile on your board, it is very puzzly, very thinky. And actually, what I have found is when I'm playing, you end up helping each other. Even though it's competitive, it's in no way cooperative. You're going to have somebody who's finished their board and you're still struggling. They're going to be looking over and go, oh, well, did you try that? Maybe if you could do that. I'm like, I can do my own board. But then sometimes I'm like, yeah, please help me.
Yeah, exactly.
I play Factory Funner and I get frustrated. And it is a delicious, brain-tingly frustration. I love this kind of frustration where my brain is working and I feel the agony of the poor decisions I made, or I feel the pain of an observation that I missed, and I own it. And it's my challenge to solve it. And I think it's wonderful. It's a pretty game. It's very busy. The tiles are very busy, but once you know the game, it's not a huge deal. But if you look at each individual tile, they're actually quite clever and fun too. So sometimes you take a second, and you look at your board and you're reading all your machines and it just makes you smile. So that is Factory Funner. I love this game. Z loves this game. Mandy, I don't know. What do you think about this one? You've played it with me.
Oh, I love it. I'm horrific at it. I recall our experience playing it with someone who we later found out was an engineer. I'm like, well, come on now.
Oh, that's right. He crushed us, right?
He was so good. And even after I've, had a crushing defeat, he was so sweet and was like, well, let's see if we can figure out how this could have worked. He's like, yeah, no, you were pretty done. But it was great. I had a great time playing it. I have Factory Fun, like I said, on the shelf. So, I mean, I do want to break it out to see the differences. But yeah, I loved it.
I like hearing that. So Factory Funner, if you like Tile Lane, if you like puzzly Tile Lane, brain burnery games with a lot of energy, Factory Funner, check it out.
We ask, you respond, we discuss. Let's talk hot topics in Victory Points. So normally Suzanne is the one to post the Victory Points topics, but I was left to my own convictions to navigate the world, what is called Board Game Geek, to put up this poll. Oh my goodness. And well, I managed to do it successfully. So there you go. It worked out. And we got some pretty interesting responses. So we decided to push this topic forward of top 10 lists. And, well, why are they appealing? So some of you are probably chuckling to yourselves, as Suzanne is doing now, because you're like, top 10s, like, that's totally a Dice Tower thing. But if you are a longtime listener to the show, well, heck, even just a few shows in, you'll know that top 10s are generally a challenge. Well, I'll say for myself. I don't know so much for Suzanne, but I do find them a bit challenging.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do too, for sure. And it's not even, somehow it's the ranking. It's the ranking. Can I pull out my 10 favorite something? Yeah, I can. But then trying to rank them amongst themselves, I find that very challenging.
Yes, agreed. So this is kind of where that falls in for us. And so we're like, why don't we push that to everybody else and see what they think about it? So basically, why are top 10s appealing? And these were some of the potential responses that I had listed. So I know what I'm getting. And that was at a 3.2%. I don't like missing out. Didn't really get too much, so 0% there. Ease of obtaining information was a big one at 29%. Fun to guess what will be on the list, and that was at 28%. Enjoy seeing if it matches my own list, so your personal list, and that's at 23.7%. A list feels definitive, and that was at 6.5%. And then we had other where you can elaborate potentially because it combined all of these or some of these responses, and that's at 9.7%.
So some of those responses were from Daul, Daeuhl.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. For me, when I was studying my collection, they were a great way to get good visibility of other games for particular areas. Like top 10 co-op games helped me know some games that I could check out and see if they fit my playgroup.
Okay. That seems to be, I think that's going to be a common theme we'll see. At McCarpin, a top 10 gives me succinct information in a format that I know what I'm getting while also being fun to guess and compare with my own list. To add one thing I also like is that it forces the reviewer to compare games, that's fair.
Fair.
Rather than just saying they like it or even giving a rating. This forces them to pick a number one.
So McCarpin likes the thing that I don't like doing.
Right, exactly.
At Gazensha says, they're concise by nature, boiling down a topic into easily discussable and memorable points. They're fun to guess what will be on the list, and especially more fun as you get to know the provider of them more. They can cause less well-trodden games to get discussed, particularly when the topic is more narrow, leading people to off the beaten path. And on some level, Gazensha says that humans just like to impart order on fundamentally unordered universes. And lists are a way of doing that. It's also a fun way to get you thinking about topics in a different way, and they can cause you to think of games on your own shelf in a different way from how you usually do.
That's true. I never thought about that, but 100%. So next we have PD Zoc. I like top 10 lists because it chunks and scopes information. BGG rank orders every game, and even Dice Tower's top 100 can be overwhelming while feeling incomplete at the same time. So this reminds me of a comment Mandy made in a podcast late last year about menu choices. Oh, I can't believe it's always about food with me, I know. A top 10 list gives me a good short list of options to consider. Too many items on the menu, and then my decision-making takes longer. I had to do more research, budget more, prioritize more, etc. See, it is exactly that. Too many choices leads to long and arduous thinking, and it's the same thing here. I like this.
I think that's fair, unless you're ordering pie, in which case the answer is all of them.
All of that.
At Vushvazul says, I enjoy the top 10s for the format. I like quick, rapid-fire breakdown of why a game is great. If something said in that explanation grabs their attention, then they can go back and go through a deeper review.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Quick and to the point. So Madbana says, for me, lists are a nice way of organizing a group of things. Top 10 lists as they pertain to board games is great if they're about something specific and attainable. So sorry, games I can't get don't help me much. Almost like a modified version of SMART goals for those familiar with the concept. As a matter of fact, I am.
I would imagine you are.
Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound or trackable. That's smart. Where they lose me is if they use best, must-have, greatest in the world forever and ever by now in their grouping, as that is more tied to some definitive pie-in-the-sky ideal that only these games matter. To that person, as all lists are subjective, of course. And well, hey now, I'm the board game cheerleader. I campaign for all board games to have someone to love them at some point. Aww.
At Shib71 says, there are two things I like in a top 10, and sometimes they're mutually exclusive. A new perspective on what games are out there and worth looking at. And the banter between the list makers, since this is at its best in the contentious negative list. Interesting. Often we don't get both on the same list.
Okay, very interesting. And Toothpick Man says, it is really a combination of things for me. I enjoy the people providing them, especially when there is a group that has banter. It is a good way to see what someone who has played a lot of games considers the cream of the crop, and it can introduce me to some games that I hadn't seen before that share a trait that I generally enjoy, like thematic or worker placement, etc.
At Beyond Monopoly says, one of the things I like about them is that they can remind me of games I have not played in a while, inspire me to get them to the table soon. I really like that answer. That's actually an angle I hadn't thought of that I can see a lot of value in.
Absolutely. And ending with Naptown MVP.
Great username.
I know, it's so great. I don't know why, but I really think there should be a top 10 reasons top 10 lists are so appealing.
Oh, Naptown.
Oh, that's just, yeah.
But,
So what do you think, Suzanne?
Well, I know that top 10 lists stress me out a little less than you, Mandy.
Yes.
I actually really appreciated the conversation on Board Game Geek because there were definitely some points here that I hadn't thought about. I primarily like the benefits of revisiting games that you may have not been top of mind or looking at games from a slightly different angle. Maybe you tend to think about games in terms of a theme or think about them in terms of a specific mechanism or designer. But if those games show up on a different list, maybe that makes you think about it a different way. And I can think about maybe a game that thematically I might skip, but then all of a sudden it shows up on best roll and write game list or something.
Right.
I hadn't heard of it before. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should check it out. So I can see a lot of value in that. Do you watch or read or listen to a lot of top 10 lists, Mandy?
Generally not, but I have listened to a few.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe a big disconnect for you and I compared to a lot of specifically Dice Tower fans, but consumers in general is I actually don't as well. I don't, I just as a fan, as a consumer of information, that's not, I guess I don't ever search out like top 10 ice creams or top 10 bicycles. Right. It's just not how my brain works. So maybe that's why there's a disconnect between you and I, because I know that we hear that a lot, and I know Tom and Eric hear it a lot, and Sam and Z, that people love the top 10s. And when we've done them, we get really positive feedback. People have really enjoyed them. So part of me thinks, oh, well, maybe I should push myself to do this more. Right. And part of me thinks, well, I don't necessarily want to do it more, but maybe I should think about getting outside my comfort zone, and certainly hearing people's input on kind of different angles to take on them. I don't know. My perspective definitely evolved here a little bit, but I know, Mandy, for you, these are really stressful.
It's like, I don't think people understand that top 100. I was so stressed. Even doing a top 10 really stresses me out. And it's just because I feel a lot of these lists, as much as people can try to be objective, there is some subjectivity to it. And the fact that you put your feelings into it. For me, I'm connected to a game, and a lot of the time it's how I feel about it. Yes, I can say if you like these mechanics and etc., you'll like it. But for me, when it's on a top 10 list for myself, it's, well, because I had some type of emotional connection to that game. And so sometimes someone who has not had the emotional connection, it comes out, well, why would you pick that game? That's dumb. That seems silly. Do you know what I mean? Not realizing that there is that connection to it. So I feel like sometimes there's a disconnect with potentially people listening or viewing the list and might say, well, I don't really get it, not realizing there is a specific reason to potentially why that was chosen. So then that leads me to another question. Do you just make a list strictly objective? These are the mechanics. This is it. You will like this because if you like XYZ, that's it. Do you know what I mean? And to me, that's not a very warm feeling to a list. I like having that emotional connection. And then coming into the whole ranking, it's number 1 or number 2 for me, like doing a top 100. Really, between 100 and 30, it's well, as long as it's within the vicinity, but that could change in 5 weeks. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. It depends on what you're in the mood for and what you've had a lot of. And to go back to your menu analogy, if you just spent a week in Thailand, if you just spent a month in Thailand and you had a month of the most glorious Thai food, do you necessarily, when you come home, is the first thing you want to go eat Thai food? Probably not. And so with games, if you've been playing a bunch of worker placement games for a while, maybe, and somebody asks you in that moment, what's your favorite game? Even though you typically may love worker placement games, maybe one of those doesn't rise to the top because you're just seeking something different or something like that. It's very contextual. I don't believe in objectivity in board game opinions at all. I just don't think. I think subjectivity is always the case and contextual. The context always matters. And I think what you're talking about is absolutely true. And I know just your personality, Mandy, you don't want to hurt any of your baby's feelings. You don't want to look at a game. You don't want to look at Pret-a-Porter and say, okay, just because I didn't say you're one of my top 10 favorites, that doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means that you're not always a good fit for a short game night kind of thing.
Insert here, feelings, nothing more than feelings.
Right. So I think that shifting context and understanding that this is a list in a moment. You could ask me my favorite games right now. Well, in 3 months, it could be totally different. And in context of all the games I've played in my life, yikes. Now, doing a top 10, does the more narrow that a topic is, does that make it harder or easier for you to think in terms of top number of favorites? So top 10 favorite games, for me, that's super, super difficult. Now, people will often ask me, Suzanne, what are your favorite roll and write games?
Sure.
And that narrows it. But I'll be honest, even that, Mandy, for me, is actually quite challenging because then my brain goes, well, what are your criteria? Are you looking for quick roll and writes or are you looking for deeper roll and writes? Are you looking for ones that you can play with unlimited number of people or are you okay with playing with a max of 4? That kind of thing.
And that comes back to, I think it was Matt Botta who talked about SMART, specific, measurable, these things, because now you're asking those questions to kind of narrow it down. So yeah, I'm 100% with you on that.
So maybe in some cases, the tighter that you can, the tighter you can draw the parameters around the top 10 list that you're trying to do, maybe that makes it simpler because your pool is reduced and you have a more specific target. But just broad tops lists, even what the guys are doing right now, top favorite games that start with the letter A. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me?
When does it become is it like a top 10 games I dream about, after a vacation? I'm trying to figure out when does the validity of the top 10 kind of say, okay, I think we've reached that point where the top 10, it's like, I didn't need to know that. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, a couple of people mentioned, well, at least one person mentioned they like seeing that number one favorite.
Right.
So here's another question for you, Mandy. If you take the ranking away, and if you just say, hey, Mandy, tell me what your top 10 favorite fishing themed games are.
Sure.
But you don't have to rank them. Does that make it easier for you, or does it not matter?
I mean, it's still, for me in the long run, it's still kind of difficult, but I find the ranking, because now you're sitting there, oh, well, if I put number 1, is it really number 1? Well, yeah, it's number 1. You'll hear me often say, this is my list for right now, and that could change. So not having a number assigned, it's somewhere up here in the top because I'm feeling it at the moment. Sure. And that could definitely be a bit easier presenting the list. And I think people would get a better, a more accurate idea of what is in my top. But I think people really like that. What's the number 1? You know, and I get it. I totally get it. They're excited and people want to share that with you.
And if you're shopping for games and you don't have a lot of time and you're trying to look for quick hit information, okay, this is the game I need to research.
Right.
I can understand that it makes it much simpler to just have one definitive. Somebody has said, somebody that you trust or you understand their taste in games has said, of this category, this is the one you should be looking at. I can understand where that is, makes it much easier on them. And theoretically, that's partly why we do the podcast, is to help people cull through the massive amount of games that are available each year and help them cull through some of that and figure out which ones they may want to look into more deeply. So maybe ranking is essential to adding that value. I don't know.
I feel like I would be the type of person, this is the type of list that would appeal to me, like a pie list about pies. So basically, a list that has 3.14 games about pies. Just silly things like that, which make it a bit more entertaining. Yes, geeky,
You're
goofy.
a goofy gal.
Just silly fun, but that might not be necessarily something that someone's looking for, but just I find it entertaining, and maybe that's the part of it that I like.
Sure. And definitely we saw that from the people who responded in the poll, was they like banter. Yeah. So maybe somebody who's just talking about their individual top 10, there's a number of people that called out having the dialogue, which is interesting because then if you disagree, you actually get more information.
Right.
If Sam says, this is my favorite card game, Z is, of course, going to disagree. And of course, the two of them are going to have a discussion.
Exactly.
And I can definitely see where there's value in seeing those different perspectives on a single game that are that's really valuable.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. I get it. I don't love it, but I get it.
Sure. And thank you, everybody, for your wonderful input on why top 10 lists are so appealing. Note, we didn't go to the top 10 reasons top 10s are so appealing. Sorry, Naptown. But I will say for me personally, I got some new perspective there. I appreciated that. Yeah. I'll have to mull on that a little bit more. Well, Mandy.
Yes.
I think it is about that time to call it an episode.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It just flew right by.
Don't forget, y'all, we have email addresses. You are welcome to reach out. I will admit I'm a little behind, but that doesn't mean I don't love hearing from you. It just means it's been really busy. Because, Mandy, do you know what I'm doing this afternoon?
No, do tell.
I'm going to go pick up a puppy I adopted.
That is so exciting. I have 2 little devils here now, so much fun.
So yeah, apologies. I'm a little behind on my email, but please do email me anyway. And while I am dealing with a puppy chewing on my finger, I will be reading your messages. You can grab me at Suzanne@dicetower.com.
And you can reach me at Mandy, that's Mandy with an I, at dicetower.com.
Of course, thank you, everybody, for joining us and listening. At Arizona Game Fair, I had a few people come up and chat about the show, and I got to hear some feedback directly from you, and that was incredibly fun. Thank you so much if you came up and chatted with me at Arizona Game Fair. It really makes us feel appreciated, and who doesn't like that feeling? So, and I want you to know we appreciate you too. Next episode 601. Tom and Eric are going to be yucking it up with some hilarious games. I actually am kind of looking forward to that list.
Oh my God. I just want to hear Eric do some like really hilarious, I don't know, yuck, 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 or some really funny laugh. I want to do it in a silly voice, the whole list in a silly voice. Exactly. That is the entertaining aspect I am looking for.
All right, everybody. Until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Andy Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vazel Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvazel.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Roy Canaday, Rob Searing, and Jeff Rademacher. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, it's now time for Two Truths and a Lie, and I can't help but say I'm so excited for this one because it's so fun. So from last week, I believed I listed off movies that had animated type characters in them. So my list started off with Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Next was Cool World. And last I finished with Space Jam. So if you said that the lie was I loved Cool World, that is correct. Cool World? Who Framed Roger Rabbit? What? So good. Space Jam was awesome. Cool World, well, left me a little, well, cool. So if you guessed Cool World, you'd be correct. What about you, Suzanne?
Last episode, I said I love my Instant Pot, I love my rice cooker, and I love my Vitamix. And the lie is that I love my rice cooker.
You don't? Oh my goodness.
Rice cooker, I'm like, I got a pot. I got water, I got rice. I don't need no special rice cooker. But Instant Pot? That thing is flippin' magic.
I have to agree with you. That's magnificent.
What's up new this week?
All right, so here we go. First I once wrote a play about hard-boiled eggs. I've been published in 3 magazines. And, well, I've been in a couple of movies. What about you, Suzanne?
Oh, well, now I feel...
La-di-da.
My Two Truths and a Lie feel really sad. All right. Mine are, I like pear jelly beans. Let me go back, Mandy.
Oh.
I like pear jelly bellies.
Oh, yes, there's a difference.
I like buttered popcorn jelly bellies. And I like watermelon jelly bellies.
Delicious. Well, there you have it. Good luck, everyone.
All right. Sorry I'm late. I'm ready for the big episode 600 extravaganza. I've got 3 cakes. Well, actually, 1 is a cake. The 6 is a cake, and then the first 0 is a pie for you, Suze. And then I wasn't sure, Mandy, what you wanted, so I made the last O a big bowl of poutine. So 600. Ready? Hello? Am I in the wrong place? Missed a text here. No need for us to make a big deal about episode 600. It's just a number. Okay, I guess this is mine then. These cheese curds really do squeak. Huh.
Thanks to our sponsors at Renegade Game Studios. Check out Hex Roller and all Renegade games at renegadegames.com.